Hello and welcome to the Elevate 2025 Display Menu as RibbonBar. Because this is a personal presentation, the views and opinions expressed in this presentation are by U.S. copyright law. Any reference to third-party materials have not been reviewed or endorsed by Appian. Appian makes no warranties of any kind and assumes no responsibility for errors or omissions. So this particular session, we're going to have a look at a deep dive into this feature, Display Menu as RibbonBar, which was first introduced in PowerBuilder 2025 GA, General Availability. We'll have a look at the different RibbonBar approaches. How does the Display Menu as RibbonBar work as far as variation on the different approaches? How to get started with this new feature. The challenges you're probably going to encounter, I certainly did when I went through Beta 1, 2, and 3 for the first time when this feature was first being introduced by the engineering team. The MDI application considerations, and it only works within the multiple document interface, by the way. The implementation techniques that I used, and the tips and tricks that I used to really make this feature shine. So hi, I'm Chris Pollock. You can see my email address there underneath my picture. I'm also on LinkedIn. I started in 1989 working for Mr. Dave Litwack, the original designer of PowerBuilder, so I have basically a few years of experience. I started my own consulting company, Software Tool & Die, back in 91, and I worked on a lot of different customer projects, probably built well over hundreds of PowerBuilder applications. I also worked for the actual PowerSoft and Sybase distributors for PowerBuilder as well during that era. In 2016, I joined Appian as the Director of Developer Relations. In that capacity, my recent projects revolve around developer liaison, PowerBuilder courses, technical presentations, and support coordination. My focus is on PowerBuilder, PowerServer, InfoMaker, around how it revolves around the different environments, especially the Windows APIs and the DBMS. So RibbonBar approach number 1. I would basically say this is exactly what you would find in the early version of PowerBuilder when we used to hand code the SQL. So it's supplied with a RibbonBar builder utility. You can manually code XML to build the graphic user interface for the RibbonBar. And you can see this utility here. So I'm going to hand code basically the upper different colors here. You see the blue and red. And the nice thing is that you see basically a GUI representation of that XML in the lower half of that utility. However, you're hand coding the XML at that point. And you still need to manually code the RibbonBar script control in order to make it work. So it's sort of like a data window control. You've got a RibbonBar control, and inside of that, you've got a data window object. And of course, the RibbonBar object is just the XML within the RibbonBar control. But you've got to basically code all that to make it work. So approach number 2, export the menu to a RibbonBar as XML from the menu painter. You can basically export XML from the current menu painter, and you can import it into the RibbonBar builder, which we just saw in approach number 1. And then you could tweak the XML, but it saved you all that time. So it's pretty easy to do now. You just open the menu painter, right mouse button, the actual menu top object class, export to RibbonBar XML, and away you go. However, though you had the XML, you still have to write the PowerScript for the RibbonBar control to make it all work. So it did save you some of the effort. However, in PowerBuilder 2025, Display Menu RibbonBar feature was added. It's aided by an extension to the menu painter called RibbonView. And the current menu design drives the entire RibbonBar graphic user interface and processing logic. So all menu PowerScript is automatically refactored into a RibbonBar for you. So you can see here, all you need to do is go to an MDI window that controls your application, and you check this one feature called Display Menu as RibbonBar. That's it, and it's all done. So this is fast, it's automatic, and it's complete. The scripts are all preserved and generated for you for the RibbonBar from the menu painter. It's a 4GL productivity, so I look at this third approach like a data window object did for our SQL. It's dynamically switchable. So you can actually change for this display menu of RibbonBar as the application processes. So menu to RibbonBar mapping. In version 2, where in the menu pane you said save as XML, this is, again, how it actually worked. You can see all the top menus create different RibbonBar category items. If you have a separator like you have there between Order Viewer, Security Manager, it created another panel at that point. And then to place that information inside that segment between the separators into that panel, which you can see at the bottom, Security Manager with a drop down, because that is a cascading menu in the menu painter, and also change password, which is also now within that particular panel. The exit here, for example, you can see the icon, but it might be a bit small, so we need to be able to actually maybe boost that. And that's where the extension comes in, which we'll show you here shortly. So for the ribbon view, this is an extension to the menu painter, and that's that extension I just mentioned. So anytime you have a menu item, you can go here to the property and tab ribbon view, and you can see here you can change the default of the panel text, which the panel text will be taken from the first menu item in that particular dropdown or between the separator line. For example, between close and save toolbar settings, the next panel would say save toolbar settings. So you can go here, instead of saying open sheet, the panel text could just say open close. You can assign a different image to it other than the one assigned to the open sheet. And you can make the button size different, smaller or larger. And you can even change the actual button image as well. So that's the extension that was added to the menu painter in 2025. So let's have a look at activating the display menu as RibbonBar. And we'll have a look at, just because you turn this property on, what's it going to do to your application? It's going to do a lot for you. But there also may be some things that you want to tweak. So we'll have a look at those things as we go through this discovery and observations demo. So let's have a look at an older version of a test application that I use all the time. I'm picking up the version here from 22R3. It's called Order Entry. I'm going to copy that over here to my folder here that has the 2025. So now you can see the application is now in my 2025 folder. And I'll move over here now to PowerBuilder 2025. So let's open up that workspace. And of course, it needs to be migrated. So we'll let the auto migrate continue. So at the end of the migration, notice here everything's okay. We do have a warning if you're actually going to move this to 64-bit, but again, that's not a problem. That's just something to consider if you're actually going to deploy the app as a 64-bit. We have no errors, however, which is impressive. So let's basically run the application. At the logon screen, you can see here now, after I enter my password, I do have a RibbonBar checkbox. So this particular version was anticipating having a RibbonBar in this application, but it doesn't currently. So having a look at the application now, you can see here we're back now to a menu. So I've opened up an MDI child window. You get the two toolbars at this point. I have a user object sitting here as well. This is fairly common on Microsoft Office products. And I've had the ability here to put a user object on the menu toolbar for over a decade now. So that's something to have a look at. Also, the debug icon that you see here is dynamic. So I add on the vertical and the horizontal at runtime various menu items as well. So let's see what happens as we go towards the RibbonBar. So if you look at my libraries here, you can see this window here called Controller Order Entry English. So if I open up that particular window, it's an MDI frame, MDI help. And if we have a look at the properties, you'll see here that we have two new properties here. One from 22, of course, which is the tab interface, which I do like. And I'd like to actually then run all of that as a RibbonBar. So I have this new property here, display menu as RibbonBar. I'm just going to check that. We'll do a save, and we'll actually execute the application again. Okay, so running the MDI frame, you notice here, voila, we're now running a display menu as a RibbonBar. So the menu is still there. It's being converted dynamically at runtime by the PowerBuilder runtime module, that PBVM, to look like a RibbonBar. And you can see here, now we have different panels at this point, tools, window, help, and debug at this point. So it's actually handled this very, very nicely. But we know some differences at this point when we're running. So one of the things you have here is a quick access toolbar. So that's something new here. So this is the RibbonBar menu bar, not the menus toolbar. And this is automatically added at this point. A list of windows that are open. So we actually can open this and have a look under window here. And we have another thing called sheet list. So this is automatically done for you by the display menu as RibbonBar. And we also have the fact that we're actually running a tabbed interface, and we can actually control what's happening. But notice at this point that the menu bar has basically exceeded the list here. So we have a problem when we have multiple toolbars, and we'll address that later on in this presentation. But if you have multiple toolbars, very long toolbars, you're going to actually find that they actually spill over to the right-hand side and go way over past the MDI frame. So that's something that we're going to have to figure out as well. If we have a look at the debug here, we can see that I'm running a MDI frame. And the nice thing about this framework that runs this application, it actually can introspect itself. So notice here that we do see MDI 1, which you've known to come and love since PowerBuilder 2. We actually have a tabbed interface, tab view, hidden object called MDI TBB1, and that you may have noticed that in 2022 R3. But we have this new one here that which is the MDI RBB1, which is the RibbonBar. So that's actually what's controlling the look and feel of this MDI frame at this point. So we have some interesting things to be able to do here. And of course, one of the things is trying to get some user object back. Toolbar overflow, the quick access toolbar. What can I do? Can I control that object? Multilingual considerations here, because I'm not in control of that. I'm in control of the actual window values and the menu values here. So I can switch that. But we have another consideration here for multilingual. Can I actually allow the application to switch back and forth between menu and RibbonBar mode so that each user can have a different look and feel? And what about window size differences? So these are some of the key considerations that we need to have a look at here at this point. And let's have a look at some of the icons at this point. I'll go here and we'll have a look, and you'll see here that the open here, this icon is here, but we're missing icons here. So where did they go? They were there in the menu. Now they're not there in the RibbonBar. So you notice that some of the icons that you've been using before may not appear. So we need to figure out what happened to those as well. That's the end of the discovery and observations at this point. So let's return back to the presentation and go deeper into this area. So from the demo, what did we discover? Missing icons, toolbar overflow, way to the right-hand side of the MDI frame. We have a quick access toolbar. How do we handle that? What do we do with this tabbed object here, which was introduced basically in 2022? Again, we've noticed that probably 80 to 95% of your application has been converted to a RibbonBar. But we just need to basically polish it up and try and understand what's going on behind the scenes here with the PowerBuilder runtime. And of course, we do have the tab bar when we have the RibbonBar. Can we control those? What do we do with that poor user object? And multilingual considerations. And how do we actually write some code to actually allow the user to run with a menu or run with a RibbonBar, or dynamically at runtime switch back and forth? This is really something that I think, personally, developing hundreds of PowerBuilder programs over my lifespan, the nice thing here is each user has a different consideration to look and feel that they like. And some users may like menu versus RibbonBar. If you're building a commercial product, for example, you may want to deploy customer A with the menu toolbar, and customer B says, I don't like that, I want to go to the RibbonBar mode. And customer C says, I want my end users to have both capabilities at runtime. So how do we do that? And window sizing differences. We have some real estate issues here that we need to address as well. And you can see that here on the right-hand side image. You can see the MDI toolbar from the menu on the left-hand side. And of course, as soon as we go to display menu as a ribbon bar, we have a different real estate consideration. So the MDI client, where we actually have our MDI child or sheets as you call them, we need to basically think about that kind of real estate issue as well. Okay, so these are some of the key considerations in moving forward. So menu considerations. Menu structures in PowerScript can be very complex. MDI frame menus can have up to 4 toolbars. Not sure if you realize that. And guess what? MDI child windows can have up to another 8 toolbars. Okay, so that's 12 toolbars that could be running inside your MDI application. So we may have to think about how we're going to handle that. And we may need to refactor the menu a bit, some fine tuning here to make sure that those panels basically display properly. And how do we dynamically adjust for menu items being added and subtracted on the vertical or horizontal? And of course, that dynamic switching from menu to ribbon bar mode and back again. So easier to continue with the main painter though, because we have this lovely painter that allows us to basically copy, paste, drag, and drop in the menu painter. So we don't have that XML builder utility anymore, writing XML. And then when I want to change the GUI look of the ribbon bar, I had to basically cut and paste and write some more XML on my own to be able to do that. Now I have everything in the menu painter, and it drives the whole ribbon bar look and feel. And of course, the PowerScript code is basically also comes with the menu class as well. So how do we actually encapsulate that? So this is a little side topic here, something of course I have been promoting since PowerBuilder 2, is how to do proper object orientation in PowerBuilder. And the menu basically also can achieve this scenario. So how do I actually encapsulate the menu? The nice thing is, it would be nice if, like all the controls in a window, we had a constructor event on the menu. But we don't have that. It's missing. And I have no idea why that was ever left out. So how do we actually fix that at this point? And guess what the answer is? Inclusional polymorphism. So note there's 2 in PowerBuilder. There's operational and inclusional. So I'm going to show you the best way I like, inclusional polymorphism. So how do we implement inclusional polymorphism? Well, let's have a look at a high-level base menu. In this case, I use MU Master. If I open that particular object, and we have a look here in the user events, I've added an OE post constructor. And you can see here, all it does at this point is provide that all menu items inherited from this one have this event. And this one does a special thing. It actually loads a data window to track the statistics on any menu. Every menu item that you actually move the mouse across or you click on. And that will also then track in the display menu as ribbon bar as well. So let's have a look now at the corresponding ancestor hierarchy for Windows. So having a look at this base ancestor window, WN Master, we can have a look here at its post open event. And you can see here I do an isValid on the menu ID, which is a pointer to the current menu. If it's available, then I do some preliminary work. And then you can see later on from that pointer that I basically casted, I actually triggered the event, the OE post constructor on the menu that's attached to any window. So now it gets fired automatically. So let's have a look at the abstract level menu. So here's the abstract level MU Application Master. Notice that it's a completely overloaded or over-engineered menu. It has lots and lots of different things in it. But you notice that because of inheritance, OE post constructor is already there. And you notice here the code basically enables and disables different menu items, separator bars, based on what's going on. Everything's encapsulated now within the menu. So this is the proper way to do it, in my opinion, if you really want to implement object orientation for all menu objects and menu classes. That also brings us to the fact that you can actually change things. You can just basically just drag and drop things and change things around. So for example, I can just drag and drop the close here if that's where I wanted it, above this particular separator to down below it. So it's very easy to do. However, menus are very complex. So when you actually go and do a full build, you may have problems. So you don't want to do this anymore. In fact, I haven't done that for a couple of decades now. So you want to use basically the object browser, go to the menu, have a look at the hierarchy, show hierarchy. You want to expand all, and you can go back to a high-level ancestor, a base, or an abstract, and you basically want to regenerate from that particular level, from where that major change was, all the way down through the descendants. Using the object browser, it'll do it in the ancestor-descendant sequence, whereas a full build just does it in the order it encounters the menu objects within a particular library sequence. So it doesn't really realign things properly between the ancestor and descendant. This is the way you should always do it. Same thing for anything that has inheritance. For example, windows and also user objects, for example, should also be done the same way, so that the ancestor descendants are basically realigned after changing high-level ancestors. So that's my 2 cents there on how to do that as far as a good PowerBuilder practice. So also there are some theme considerations at this point as well. So notice that you can actually have 2 types of themes. You can have a RibbonBar control built-in theme property. It's set to 0 or off by default. If the application uses an overall theme, for example, the apply theme command, the RibbonBar theme will follow the current application theme as controlled by the theme.json file, which you probably know for quite a few releases now. If the application does not use a theme, then the RibbonBar can then use its own internal theme. Well, how does it do that? Well, the RibbonBar control has a built-in theme property, and that's actually called built-in theme, and it's set to 0, so no theme. So you can set that theme property to a value greater than 0, and you can use a built-in theme. Note if the application theme is enabled, it overrides and takes precedence over the RibbonBar's built-in theme. And we'll see that later on as we go through further demos. So again, you can choose a combination that best suits your approach for your application needs. So let's have a look at RibbonBar fine-tuning. All those things that we discovered at the early part of this presentation. How do I fix those? Well, let's look at RibbonBar user interface and behaviors. Especially the first one, MDI child toolbars. Remember, in the discovery phase, we had basically toolbars that were floating way over to the right-hand side of the MDI frame because the MDI child window has its own toolbar or toolbars active. So how do I fix that? We can do that with a property setting so that all MD applications follow suit. However, when you're switching back and forward between menu toolbars and RibbonBar toolbars, that won't work if you basically do that high-level ancestor. So let's have a look at how I would basically approach this. So returning back to the PowerBuilder 2025 IDE, let's have a look at a window called WN Main Master. Now this is basically the ancestor for all main windows which may or may not be an MDI sheet. If I open up this particular window, however, you notice that on the toolbar here, we do have a property called Toolbar Visible. We can just turn that off, and then all main windows would never have a toolbar. Of course, that may not be desirable because if it may not be an MDI application, or it may be an MDI application, but in menu mode, we want them. In RibbonBar mode, I don't want them. So this is something that you probably want to change at runtime. To be able to do that, let's have a look at the code here. So the code in the open event of this window gets basically a pointer to the controller window. And then it asks, is it a valid window? Then are we in RibbonBar mode? If so, then we need to change some visibility at this point. So again, the toolbar visible is off. That if the RibbonBar is active, because this is now an MDI child window, and if not, then tool the toolbar on because this is in menu mode at this point. So that satisfies that particular look and feel. So let's have a look at this at runtime. So at runtime, here we have the MDI frame open, and it'll open up a child window. Doesn't matter which one. And you can see here we can open up different child windows. But look, for example, that now in menu mode, I'd expect the debug to be here. It does appear on the frame, which is correct. But if I go here to tools, then you can see here that's where the actual panel segment has the debug, and I can enter that at this point. If I do that, you can see here I'm on a child window. If I hit this debug, I'm on the MDI frame because I can see MDI 1. So let's restart the application and see what happens going to the other way. So I'm going to issue basically a restart. In this scenario, the login window, you can see here I'm going to remove the RibbonBar option at the login process before the MDI frame. So now we're in menu mode. You can see the menu working out just fine. If we were to open up a child window, then you can see here that because we're in menu mode, then the menu, for example, would display this dynamically, that the debug here at the end of the child MDI toolbar. And this works out fine. There's the child, and there's the MDI parent at that point. So it works out perfectly with that logic. So what's the next thing on the list? Dynamic menu items. I actually just showed you the result of that. Well, let's see actually how it's implemented within the PowerBuilder IDE. So if we go back to the abstract level, so you can see a debug here at the end. You can see a debug underneath tools. And how's it done? Well, again, in that user event post constructor for the menu, which we talked about earlier in the presentation, I go in here and I say, hey, are we in debug mode? If so, is DisplayMenuAsRibbonBar active? Yes, it's true. Okay, so if it's true, then I have to do this. I have to make these things visible at that point, which is the debug here at the bottom. If not, then I actually have to go and make this debug visible and the other one false. So in this case, this one is true and this one is false. And that way I know I'm in RibbonBar mode, do this. If I'm in menu mode, do that. So we saw that there when I ran the application there in the previous run. So that handles dynamic menu items. But what about this new thing here called the Quick Access Toolbar? Let's investigate that much deeper. So when the DisplayMenuAsRibbonBar is actually active, you can see here that there's a Quick Access Toolbar, or QAT for short. And we can customize it. We can show the Quick Access Toolbar below the ribbon bar, and we can also minimize it. We can actually set the Quick Access Toolbar. So for example, here, if I wanted to remove contacts, customer, as an example, I've removed 2 of them, and I actually go ahead and do a restart here. Let's see what happens. So from the login screen, we see the Quick Access Toolbar. Notice that it remembered the fact that this particular user has removed. It doesn't want to see contacts or customer. This may be a good feature, for example, if you want to deploy an application for certain security scenarios where certain users do not have access, for example, to management transactions where regular workers do. So you cannot, for example, on the main toolbar, that you do not see any more contacts or customers at that point. So how is this actually accomplished internally? Let's have a look at that in a closer detail in the code. So notice that this magic is all done by this one command called setQuickAccessToolbar status path. If you do not call this method, then the Quick Access Toolbar does not remember your settings. So let's have a look and see what happens when you actually execute this command. It has to be done early in the application startup, by the way. So opening up File Manager, we can have a look and see that there is basically a file called QAT, a suffix. So that's the QAT toolbar settings. If I double click this, however, and have a look at it in Notepad, you can see here it's basically just gibberish. Nothing that you can actually set it as far as a INI file or a JSON file, for example. It's an internal format. Once the application starts, however, and that command is executed again, it has a look at the previous settings and restores the Quick Access Toolbar to the main ribbon bar menu at the top based on those settings. Again, this may be something that you want to deploy into production, where you go ahead and you basically remove certain transactions that certain users should not see. And then you can have different versions of the QAT. This is for a regular worker. This is for sort of intermediate management, senior management. And you can basically swap this file out at runtime to give the user the ability to actually open up or remove certain things from the main menu and the quick access toolbar. So again, that's all you need to do is execute set quick access toolbar status path. If you do not call this command, then no QAT file will be produced in your application folder. So returning to the PowerBuilder IDE, let's have a look at this window that I created called RibbonBar Master. Inside of that is a data window, and the user can actually change the values in this data window. And let's see what happens here. You notice here in the item changed event, I have a look and see what's being changed. I grab the data from what was input, and I actually update a particular property of MDIRBB1, the ribbon bar, based on that information that I got from the data window. Same thing here for the hide panel text, hide tab header, built-in theme, and face name. So again, all I'm doing is basically saving that information in the property of the ribbon bar itself, RBB1. It also updates an INI file. You notice in my INI file, I have a ribbon bar section, of which I basically have the ability here to save what is actually input from that dialog as well at the same time. So when the application restarts, I can read this value in the INI file and I can set the application back to those settings. How does that work? Let's have a look here. So return to the application that's executing. Let's go to Tools. Let's have a look at settings for the particular ribbon bar. And here's that dialog. So what happens here now, for example, if I hide the text? Well, you can see here the actual panel text goes away. If I hide the header, that you notice the header up top goes away as well. And if I hide the quick access toolbar, then it drops from the main toolbar here on the top. And I can put it all back again if I want. If I have text size here, you notice here that I can actually zoom it up to any level that I want. So it's like the zoom feature of the data window, which I find really handy, especially again for people that have visual acuity problems. And we can also change the theme. So let's go, for example, to dark. So now what you see at this point is the ability here to actually change the ribbon bar theme without affecting the application theme. However, if the application theme is enabled, it overrides the setting at this point. So let's restart the application. So now again from the login screen, next time the user starts the application, you can see here that the ribbon bar settings come back because I read that from the INI file where I saved those particular settings, MDIRBB1, and then just restore it on the application restart. So that's a handy way to do that. So what happens now if I actually adjust the theme for the entire application? For example, to Lime. Let's have a look and see what happens. Notice that everything now, that the MDI frame and the MDI child, goes to lime green. And notice that there was a theme on the ribbon bar, but because the application theme is enabled, it overrides the theme on the ribbon bar. So since we're here, let's have a look at the tab view. It's not in this particular presentation focus, but it also is related to the way I'm doing it for the ribbon bar. So again, let's look at Tools. Let's have a look here at the view. And notice that we can also change the font here as well. So notice here, for example, I can increase information here on the tab view. And we can have a look at, I can remove, for example, the context menu. I can remove the icon. See, it disappeared here on the tab view. I can remove the separators. I can remove the text. I can remove the text here altogether and the tips. And I can, of course, change the actual size at this point. Might as well put it back so we can actually see what's going on. So again, in my INI file, I have tab view settings. So I'm basically modifying at runtime the MDI TBB1 object, and I also save it in the INI file so I can restore those settings that the user preferences on the application restart. So food for thought, we can handle the tab view as well as the ribbon bar settings nicely from the application point of view. Before we move on to the next area within this presentation, let's go back quickly to the Quick Access Toolbar. The aspect I want to talk about now is the fact that I can put a user object on the menu toolbar. How come I can't do that on the ribbon bar? It's actually pretty easy to do if you know how. Let me show you. So what I'm going to do now is launch this thing called PowerBuilder Windows Explorer that I wrote. So notice that we have a user object here sitting on the menu toolbar. In the Windows Explorer, I can have a look at all the processes that are running. And if I scroll down and I have a look at that particular application, the order entry demo system, you'll notice that there is a visible window called FN Fixed Bar. This is actually the actual toolbar that sits along the top here. PowerBuilder Runtime has secretly running in behind. What happens when you actually change it to a ribbon bar? Oh, that's pretty easy. Let's relaunch the application and check it out. So now we relaunch the application with the ribbon bar. We can see a user object here sitting on the top of the ribbon bar toolbar. Let's refresh this particular Windows Explorer, having a look at the processes. For the order entry application, notice that we have another window that's running hidden in the background here called FNDT3. So that's the actual class name of this ribbon bar sitting up top where the Quick Access Toolbar is running. So returning back to the IDE, let's have a look at how I handled that. So notice I have a method here on the window called Add Control to Toolbar. So somewhere in here I have to be able to distinguish that. So what I do here is I use a find window and I look for that class name for the ribbon bar or the actual menu. Once I found that particular address, I do an open user object. The key is here to do a set parent. So that user object is attached to the toolbar, whether it be the menu toolbar or the ribbon bar. There's a bug in the current GA release, and that you notice here that this should work. It does for the menu, but it doesn't for the ribbon bar. I have to do this and set it to the handle of the window itself. So again, this is a bug. And I've opened up a ticket for this, and that should be corrected in the next maintenance release. And it is working because I'm testing PowerBuilder 2025 revision 2, and that's working there. So returning back to the final item here, having a look at the actual ribbon bar, we have a new event on the window. It's called Menu Changed. So let's have a look at how this might be implemented. So returning to this part of the IDE, I've opened up a base ancestor window, WN Master. If we have a look at the event list, we'll see here that the menu changed event has been added to all the windows. What I do here is basically said if I'm in debug mode and display menu as toolbar is active, then you'll notice here that this event fires and passes you the old menu and the new menu as a class name. And all I'm doing at this point for audit purposes is I'm just basically writing that information to the log. So let's have a look at that when I run the application. So here we are. I'll open up some windows here. And we'll have a look and see what's happening. I could do that by opening the log. Anytime I write it to the log, I write it as a change. So let's filter it down. And you can see here I set to basically change privileges to the operating system. And then it actually tells me these are the menus that are taking effect this time. There is another bug, and I've opened up a ticket at this point. You notice here that the previous menu first argument is question square, basically nothing intelligible. And we've actually had the ribbon bar change it over to the current menu for that particular child window, MDI child sheet. This is another ticket that I've opened. This is working in 2025 revision 2. I do get a proper name for the first argument. So the next maintenance release of the GA, and when you move to revision 2, you'll get a proper name at this point. So other things you can do here in this particular event, of course, you can take absolute low-level control over the ribbon bar, which is something else you may want to do, probably in a further descendant of this high-level base window. But you can do almost anything you want. You can actually manipulate the ribbon bar even further than what I've shown you using some low-level ribbon bar commands, which you might have used in PowerBuilder 2021, 2022 already. So for this presentation, note I've been using applications that I've written. They're part of the Software Tool and Die Foundation classes. If you type this into Google search, you'll get a link to that particular download area. The download area is basically, once you get there, you're going to click on Files, Applications, PowerBuilder, and you can actually go down here and download the order entry example application exactly the way I've shown it to you. And we also have the Windows Explorer, which allows me to go in how I could find that hidden toolbar that the menu or the ribbon bar is using. If you go into the order entry, by the way, you'll notice here that there is a beta section. So if you want to use the latest, for example, I have a preview of people that are actually testing PowerBuilder 2025 R2 with this particular version of the framework. And I have basically the revision 3 pre-release of my framework running against build 3711, part of the GA release of PowerBuilder 2025 of what I've been showing you here that was running. So feel free to download those and experiment and have a look at the code that I showed you through this presentation. So the RibbonBar tab view application deployment. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. Make sure that if you do deploy a runtime for the tab view, that you make sure that the PowerBuilder packager, or if you're manually copying this DLL, goes across to where the application is deployed. Also for the RibbonBar, don't forget there's a new DLL that's required as well. And it has some complementary DLLs. For example, the PBXSS, XSSC, and PBJSON.dll will also have to go with RibbonBar support. Again, for more information, have a look at the PowerBuilder 2025 PowerBuilder runtime files listing here, either in your PowerBuilder help or online in this URL. So don't forget to connect with us. You can connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, XCOM, or YouTube. On YouTube, there's a lot of great videos and examples. So thanks for watching. So I hope you learned some interesting tips and techniques on managing the ribbon bar and polishing it up. For those of you in the live Elevate 2025 conference, we're going to break right after this to a live Q&A.
Now is Q&A time. Welcome to join our live Q&A Zoom meeting with the presenter. You'll find the Zoom meeting link at the top of the chat panel and also in the resources area below. Just click and join us live. You can enter the meeting from the Zoom app or your browser. Just type your name and click Join. You'll be in a waiting room until the meeting starts, and you'll join automatically once it begins. Now that you're in, you have 10 minutes to ask the presenter any questions about this session. Don't miss the chance.